Hey, and good morning. Welcome to the NFL Week 6 DFS Slate Playbook video. Today is Saturday, October 17th, 2020, and we're talking DFS, NFL DFS for this upcoming Sunday's main slate, both on FanDuel and DraftKings. In this video, we're talking everything in depth. This is the Playbook video. We're going to dive into the quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, kickers, just kidding. Kickers have been removed since 2018 from FanDuel. Well, we're going to talk in depth about all relevant positions, talk about my favorite players, guys that I think you can build your lineups around in DFS for this Sunday's main slate. So, if you're here for DFS, you've come to the right place. Sit back, relax, let me do the talking. We're going to dive in depth into this main slate. This is No Huddle Fantasy Sports. Yo, hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to No Huddle Fantasy Sports. As always, I thank you guys so much for finding your way here to this channel. More importantly, randomly clicking on this video, however it got delivered to you. You're here now, so stick here with me. We're talking DFS for the Sunday main slate, the October 18th Sunday NFL main slate. A lot of good games to talk about, a lot of interesting spots, a lot of guys missing from this slate that typically are on these main slates. So we're going to dive into all that. We're going to talk about, obviously, my favorite plays, just as we do every single week. This is the Playbook video, so we're going to provide a little bit more detail to help you guys really decide. It's instead of me just giving you the plays, I'm giving you some information. So ultimately, again, you guys can make the choice as to whether or not you want a player. We've been running hot. If you've been a part of this channel, watch the last couple of weeks. Last week, week 5, all the picks were absolutely amazing. Week 4 was great. Week 3 was great. Week 2 was amazing. Everything's been running hot here, so make sure you jump aboard. The only thing before we get started that I ask of you guys, the call to action for you guys, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Make sure you like these videos if they're helpful. All that goes a long way in helping support this channel just generally. It's the only way I continue to grow. So I appreciate you guys being here. I appreciate you guys helping out this channel. But more importantly, I'm excited to talk about Week 6 NFL DFS. We got an exciting one ahead of us. I did a lot of research, so let's dive into that. What are we looking at for a slate outlook here? Well, we have 11 total games. More importantly, I need you guys to stay aware, just as every single week applies to this, but postponements, the testing, I can't mention on this channel what that relates to because apparently that bans your channel or that bans your video, whatever. In general, just be aware. I know there's been some positive testing over the last couple of days that have come back negative, some back and forth, whether or not teams are going to be able to play, not play, go to facilities, whatever it is. You guys got to stay on your toes with this because this is a killer, right? If you start guys from a game in DFS that gets postponed or moved off of the slate, you could really be royally screwed there. So again, you guys just got to stay paying attention to that stuff. That's part of this process. It's just like baseball. If a pitcher gets scratched, you need to make sure your team or your quarterback, whatever it is, gets scratched. As far as I'm aware, every player I'm going to give you right now is good to go. That's why we wait, or at least I wait this long to put out these videos. I realize it's Saturday. You guys would prefer these videos earlier. But the later I can get these videos to you guys, the benefit of it being later is the simple fact that with all of the stuff that's going on, with Melvin Gordon getting DUIs and getting sick, OBJ getting sick, all of that can kind of sort itself out. Additionally, on Fridays, I get, or just in general, you can get injury reports, the kind of final injury reports. So all of that is relevant. But in general, outside of that, I'm talking about a slim QB and tight end slate, main slate here. When I say slim for quarterback, you're missing like Kyler Murray, you're missing Mahomes, you're missing Russell Wilson, just a lot of guys that are typically mainstays, eat up a lot of ownership, are not on the slate. In addition to that, there's basically no expensive tight ends on this slate. It's Mark Andrews and then everybody else. You figure Kelsey, Kittle, all those types of players are off of this slate. So we got to navigate around that. I have interest in mid-tier quarterbacks this week, and you can kind of see the chart here that I give you guys every single week. I typically pay up for quarterbacks. I just don't see it this week. It's Lamar Jackson, again, then kind of everybody else. And I'm just not really feeling Lamar Jackson this week. I think he's expensive, obviously. And it's going to take a lot for him to pay that price off. And he just really hasn't shown that upside yet this year. Could be wrong here. Could be a guy you like. I'd like to know in the comments, again, as always, about what you guys are interested in. So in general, for me, I'm kind of sticking to those mid-tier price quarterbacks. Same deal, mid-tier price running backs. There's not a ton of running backs on this slate that are highly priced. so I will be sticking to the mid-tier. And then we're going to pay up at wide receiver. It's one of the first weeks I'm doing this. Basically, every receiver I'm going to give you guys is an expensive receiver for a core play. I think it works this week, especially on DraftKings. I think it's the strategy to go with. We'll talk about all that here very shortly. Last but not least, we're going to fit the available tight end. There's a couple guys I'm interested in. They should fit, but in general, it's just build the rest of your lineup and see what tight ends fit. So that is kind of the slate outlook for this week 6. Checking out Vegas totals for week 6 here. You can see there's only 5 teams, 5 games projected over-unders of 50 or more points. Compared to the last couple of weeks, that's down a little bit. In addition to that, we don't have a single individual team projected above 30 total points for this slate, whereas over the last couple of weeks, we've seen 30 or more projected implied team totals for teams. But in general, Tennessee, Minnesota, Detroit, and Miami are your teams that are projected the most amount of points on this slate, at least from a Vegas perspective. On the flip side, Denver, Cincinnati, and the New York Jets in general are all projected below 20 implied team total points. We always remind you guys, or I do at least, that anything below 20 are typically teams we want to avoid. Unless you guys got some info I don't have, those are teams that are not going to likely score a lot of points, not a real good spot for fantasy. You can selectively pick players from those teams, but in general, we're going to stay away from those. I will say a couple games I'm really interested in here. The one involves Atlanta at Minnesota. I think that game has a great shootout potential. Obviously, it's a 54 over-under, one of the highest on the slate, but definitely a game I am interested in attacking. In addition to that, Detroit at Jacksonville at 54.5. I think both of those games in general look to be setting up for possible shootouts, fantasy goodness games. We'll talk about all that here very shortly. So starting off the slate, week 6 with quarterbacks. 2 guys I'm really interested in. 1 guy I'm very interested in. The second guy here, we'll talk about why I think you can go elsewhere should you want to. But Matthew Stafford is definitely my number 1 quarterback as of this moment. I will remind you guys, I typically run 4 quarterbacks on a given slate. In fact, I definitely will run 4 quarterbacks. I don't switch off that strategy. It's been successful for me. My suggestion to you guys, find a strategy, stick to it. If it's successful, run with it, critique it as you go. But in general, I run 4 quarterbacks. So Matthew Stafford and Matt Ryan likely will be 2 of my 4 quarterbacks. As the slate evolves, as we get into Sunday and ownership start to really sort themselves out, you start to figure out who's going to be owned. I fluctuate. If Matthew Stafford is going to be 30% owned, trust me, I'm not going to play him as my number 1 quarterback. But if he's going to be 5%, that definitely plays into it. So I will give you guys my top 2 as of this moment, and we'll go from there. Again, some of this will change, but trust me, I'm not trying to backdoor you guys and not play the guys I'm suggesting. It's just they do fluctuate a little bit. But Matthew Stafford right now is by far my favorite quarterback. I think he's in the best spot. He's meeting all of the boxes, checking every box I want for a quarterback. $7,300 on FanDuel, $6,300 on DraftKings. He's playing on the road in Jacksonville. I just mentioned that at 55, 54.5, 55 over under. Really good number for this particular slate. Detroit, Matthew Stafford in Detroit is a favorite on the road at -3, but -3 isn't too bad. That game's going to stay close. We do like to see that. 28.8 implied team total. As of right now, I believe that's second highest implied team total on the board. So really good numbers there. You want to attack, have a part of those offenses, especially quarterbacks, from those really high-scoring teams in close games on the road. All these things I like for quarterbacks. Matthew Stafford is hitting that here for us. He offers a ton of value, in my opinion, and value as both a quarterback and a stack. I'll talk about Kenny Golladay. I'll talk about Marvin Jones. There's certain players I think you can definitely pair with him, and it's very affordable, and you can go a lot of different ways. But I mentioned, we're kind of mid-tier pricing at quarterbacks. This is where we're starting here. Again, solid price, especially on DraftKings, where it's only $6,300. Top 10 in pass blocking for Detroit on the season, according to Pro Football Focus, according to most statistics. Detroit's pass blocking is very good this year. They are playing a team in Jacksonville that has a bottom 5 defensive pass rush. So do the math there. Matthew Stafford should have plenty of time. He shouldn't get banged up in the pocket. He should, be able to hit deeper throws. All the stuff that you kind of want from a quarterback in DFS, in fantasy, it's kind of equaling out here. I think Matthew Stafford should have plenty of time in the pocket with that top 10 versus bottom 5 there. Lions passing game is setting up very well this week. And by that, I mean, look at this. Jacksonville's secondary currently is graded 22nd overall by Pro Football Focus. So definitely not a good number there, not a good grade. Jacksonville is currently allowing 341 passing yards a game. That's 31st in the NFL. Again, only 32 teams, ladies and gentlemen. So really bad numbers there. Jacksonville's defense is also allowing a 72+% completion rate. That is 29th overall in football. So they're giving up the yards. They're giving up basically every throw is completed. They're ranked really bad from a grading perspective. It's a top 10 pass rush versus a bottom 5 pass rush. I mean, does this not sound great? Matthew Stafford is in a great spot here. Last but not least, he has or just in general, this game has an average to above average pace of play. So the ball should be moving more volume. It's not going to be a slow game, I guess is the point there. But moving on here to my second guy, I'm going to talk about Matt Ryan. And in general, this was my last fill-in for this particular video. I was really struggling between Matt Ryan, Ryan Fitzpatrick. There were a couple of different guys I was looking at for my second spot here. I'm going to go with Matt Ryan, and here's why. $7,400 on FanDuel, $66 on DraftKings. So basically right in that same mid-tier pricing. I like it here. I like the stack with certain players. That's a big thing, big benefit here. Playing on the road in Minnesota, 54 over-under. Really good numbers there. On the road quarterback. Really, really like that also. Atlanta is a underdog on the road at +4. So not a super underdog, super really different big spread here. But in general, you want a quarterback on the road that's an underdog, is going to have to throw the ball a lot. You have it here. 25.3 implied team total. So a solid number there. Not one of the highest on the slate, but definitely a solid number. It's not low by any means. I like that for Atlanta. I like that for Matt Ryan. Now, he did struggle in Week 5. Atlanta's offense struggled in Week 5. I think that leads to lower ownership here. But if you go back to that game, what did Gurley have? 2, maybe 3 touchdowns? That's not going to happen every week. They're going to throw the ball a ton. They continue to throw the ball a ton. I think you have some positive regression coming Matt Ryan's way. Lower ownership, I want to take a shot here in tournaments. High over-under, I talked about that. Close spread. More importantly, it's a road game for Matt Ryan, and he's still in a dome. Minnesota plays in a dome, of course, the Vikings. So that really plays into Matt Ryan's, I guess, abilities. He plays at home in a dome. He's on the road in a dome. In general, that leads to more offense, regardless of quarterbacks, and I think that's a good spot. It's a good note here for Matt Ryan. Weak Atlanta defense. We know this, right? They have a very, very bad defense. They're giving up leads when they have them. All that stuff comes into play because Matt Ryan should be trailing just as they do almost every single game. If they're not trailing, they're going to lose the game. You can pretty much bet on that. So again, from a quarterback fantasy perspective, he's going to continue to throw the ball. He's a solid offensive line, defensive line pass advantage. I talked about that for Matt Stafford. Well, you have that here at +23% according to Pro Football Focus. So really not worried about him getting banged up too much. Shouldn't be scrambling around the pocket too much. Is a good spot. Evens out pretty well in his favor. Great passing volume. You can see a minimum of 36% or 36 attempts if you go back to his game log. So I mean, that's the lowest, 36, 40 plus times they're throwing the ball, tons of volume. You want that volume for fantasy quarterbacks. We get that here with Matt Ryan. Of course, he has elite weapons. Whether you're talking Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, even Hurst at tight end. Russell Gage has been playing really well. He has Todd Gurley in the backfield. A lot of plus, good matchups for them. A lot of these guys, wide receiver, cornerback matchups line up very well. Minnesota is not very good versus the pass. Their secondary is graded 20th, and their pass rush is graded 30th. So that's why he has that O-line, D-line advantage. That's why a lot of these receivers are setting up so well. Really, really good spot for Matt Ryan here. As of right now, he's my second quarterback on this slate from a GPP's perspective. So let's talk running backs, and for this, you're going to see I'm going a little bit different here. A lot of guys that are being talked about, a lot of guys like Derrick Henry, Madison from Minnesota, those guys are going to be heavily owned this week for a good reason. I think they're in good spots. They get great volume. At least Derrick Henry gets a ridiculous amount of volume on the ground, doesn't come off the field, all the things you want for a running back. But they're going to be highly owned. We're playing GPPs here. We're setting up well for GPPs. We got to go a different way, and I like wide receivers, so I'm sticking to some mid-tier priced running backs here. In my opinion, play Derrick Henry, play Madison if you're playing cash games. It's hard to go away from those guys, but these are the guys I'm looking at for GPPs. Starting off with Jonathan Taylor, $7,100 on FanDuel, $64 on DraftKings. Most expensive back I'm going to give you guys right off the bat here. Playing at home versus Cincinnati, 46.5 over-under. I don't like that over-under, but we're talking running backs here, so it could play into our favor. Indianapolis is a huge -8 favorite with a 27.3 implied team total. So the good thing is their implied team total is still pretty good, relatively speaking, compared to the over-under there, so you like that. But this is the thing we talk about every single week for running backs. He checks every box for a DFS running back, the guys that we want in our lineups. He's playing at home. They are a heavy favorite. He gets the majority of the snaps, and it's a good team total. He gets usage, a little bit of usage in the passing game. I don't think they're going to have to really go there this week. In my opinion, and this is just my opinion, you watch them get kind of eaten alive. Really, it was Phillip Rivers get eaten alive by the Cleveland Browns. They cannot get into the habit of relying on Phillip Rivers to win them games. If they're smart, which I do believe they are, they have a great offensive line, they have a great running back. To win games, they're going to have to rely on their good defense, their good O-line, and their running backs. So I think that's what they get back to here. I don't mention it specifically, but that's kind of my opinion on Jonathan Taylor. He's averaging over 18 touches a game, even in losses, so really good numbers there. The guy is playing a lot. Indianapolis, I talked about it, top 5 heaviest run team in the league, meaning they do want to run the ball. They shouldn't get away from that philosophy. That's how they're winning games, with that good defense. Indianapolis, in addition to that, is a top 5 run blocking team, according to Pro Football Focus, so that sets up well for the running backs, obviously, including Jonathan Taylor. Second best O-line, D-line run advantage at plus 36% against Cincinnati. You got to like that. So it's setting up very, very well from the upfront offensive line perspective, which should just lead to an easier day for Jonathan Taylor. Cincinnati's run defense is graded 20th in the NFL, so they're certainly bottom half of the league. They're not very, very good versus the run. You have confidence basically attacking them with running backs. And then in general, just if you want to talk ownership, and this is why I like him so much, I believe he's going to be in that 8 to 10 sweet spot of a running back ownership. And there's no reason why he shouldn't be owned, because again, he checks every box. He's playing at home, all the things we want. So I do like Jonathan Taylor. Now this next guy, James Conner, is a bit of a risk here. I will completely admit that to you guys. I am a Pittsburgh fan, so this could be a homer call. But I typically take a risk on one running back, and this is the guy. Again, we're meeting some of the criteria I want. It's setting up well. You're going to see lower ownership. All those things come into factor here with James Conner. $7,100 on both sites, FanDuel and DraftKings. Playing at home versus Cincinnati, a good over-under of 51. Pittsburgh is a slight favorite. I don't know if that's changed this morning, but they're minus 3.5. 27 implied team total. All good numbers there across the board for James Conner and Pittsburgh. It's a slightly risky play, I mentioned that already, but he does have a lot of upside. I think you can expect lower ownership. He meets a lot of these criteria, a lot of these boxes, right? He's a home running back. He's a favorite home running back, minus 3.5 or more. And it's a solid implied team total. In addition to that, this guy's playing 65 to 70% of the snaps. We know he gets usage on third down. He's there. He doesn't come off the field unless it's rest. So all things really, really good here for him. Pass game usage, I mentioned that. He's getting 3 to 4 targets a game. Check that box, check that box, check that box. And that's why I like him so much, is because it just fits in. So if you ignore some of the narratives, if you ignore all the behind-the-scenes stuff, and you just stick to the numbers, James Conner stands out here because he checks all those boxes that we want for a running back. So that's why I'm going there. He's averaging 19-plus touches per game since week 2. He got hurt week 1. So if you don't count week 1, that is a really, really elite style type of touch for a running back. Have to like that. In terms of opportunities, that number's like 22 or 23 if you count targets. So really, really good opportunities for James Conner. He's not coming off the field, as I mentioned. He's getting all the use. They're sticking to the run when they can. He scored in 3 straight games. Really good numbers there. I believe Cleveland's rush defense has given up, out of 5 games, 4 rushing touchdowns. 1 in every single game, except 1 in 4 out of 5 games. So again, really good numbers there. Averaging 4.9 yards per carry this season. That's a 5 is an elite number. So really good numbers there in terms of what James Conner has been able to do with the ball. And then last but not least, I think Cleveland's defense is way better. I will fully admit that. But in terms of their rush defense, they are graded 13th in the NFL. So kind of average, mid-average tier. And they haven't really faced too many great teams. This is a great game, a great, matchup for Cleveland to see where they really stand. I like James Conner here. He is my high-risk, high-reward play at running back. 2 other guys I will quickly mention here. I'm going with James Robinson. I went with him last week. He really didn't do much, right? He fumbled. He got some yardage, didn't find the end zone. We really need that on FanDuel. But I do like coming back to James Robinson here. Playing at home, $6,500 on FanDuel, $6,800 on DraftKings. Really good pricing there. Playing at home versus Detroit, 55 over-under. Jacksonville is a home underdog at +3, but has a 25.8 implied team total, so a solid number there. Really, this is the comeback play, right? So if I'm playing Matt Stafford with a stack, got to come back with a player, and I like James Robinson as that comeback player. So naturally, this is fitting into my stacks, especially those Matt Stafford stacks. I mentioned it already. He is a slight home underdog, which isn't preferred for running backs, but outside of that, he checks those boxes we want for running backs. Playing over 60% of the snaps so far in the season. He's getting 68, 70% of the team's rushing attempts. That's 6th overall in the NFL. He's getting good pass game usage, 7 targets in week 5. So when they're down, even if they are going to be down in this game, he still is on the field. He's still getting passing game usage. Minimum of 17 touches a game. I went back through the game log. Really good numbers. For, again, you're talking $6,500 basically on both sites. So 17 plus touches equals good things here. We want to try to get 60 rushing attempts, or I should say 60 touches out of our running backs. I think the guys I'm giving you meet that criteria if you're using flex as one of those spots. O-line, D-line does have a run advantage. It's not the greatest, but I should mention it's plus 8%. It's at least not negative. So it's a neutral to just above average run advantage for the Jacksonville Jaguars here. Again, they're playing at home, so you do have to like that advantage. Detroit's rush defense is not very good. They're graded 23rd overall in the NFL. In addition to that, they're allowing 5.2 yards per carry, that Detroit Lions defense. So really good setup here, in my opinion, for James Robinson. Really good bounce back spot. I like him. I think he's got a lot going for him. I mean, he's undrafted, rookie. A lot of things going in his favor here. I do like coming back to James Robinson in week 6. I also like David Montgomery. I think a lot of people are going to be on him. I expect some decent ownership for David Montgomery. $5,900 on FanDuel, $58 on DraftKings. He's just criminally priced too low. I don't understand what happened or how they did it, but he is priced too low. Playing at Carolina on the road here, 44.5 over-under, so not the prettiest over and under, not one we would attack, but I do still like the spot here. Chicago it's basically a pick'em game, but Chicago's +1 right now as far as I understand. Or I should say, I think they're -1. I think they're actually a favorite at this point. It's basically a pick'em game at 22 in terms of an implied team total for Chicago. So I do like David Montgomery from that perspective. The price tag on him, as I mentioned, is just too cheap. So he offers a ton of value on both sites. I do expect people to be on this. There's going to be ownership, but this is chalk I'm willing to eat. Just too good of a spot. He is playing 80% of the snaps, and really his snap count has gone up significantly when Cohen went down with injury. David Montgomery is a guy that can catch the ball, can come out of the backfield with receptions, and now is playing third down. So you see that 80+% of the snaps. It's gone way up for him over the last couple of weeks. His uptick in receiving, again, similar note, is a result of the injury to Cohen, unfortunately, but it's playing well from a DFS perspective. He's had 14 targets in his last 2 games. He's a really, really good play on DraftKings, in my opinion. But in general, it's an elite matchup versus Carolina team. So if all things set aside, whether it's the usage, whether it's the receiving game usage, whatever it is, Carolina is a cake elite matchup for any running back right now. We want to attack them with running backs, and that's what we're doing here, even though it's on the road. Solid O-line, D-line run advantage of +15%. Their rush defense is graded 32nd in the NFL, and ladies and gentlemen, if you're unaware, there's only 32 teams in the NFL, so they are dead last in terms of a graded rush defense. They cannot stop a soul in terms of a running back. In addition to that, just another number for them, 31st in the NFL with a 5.4 yards per carry average given up to running backs. So everything is setting up very, very well for David Montgomery this week. He is by far my favorite value back on the slate, but these are, in general, my 4 favorite backs, guys that I will be building around. Hopefully this is helpful for you guys. Hopefully you guys have similar interests. If not, let me know down in the comments below. With that said, let's move on to the wide receivers position. So we have saved a lot of money, ladies and gentlemen. Whether you talk Matt Ryan, Matt Stafford, or any of the running backs I just mentioned, any of those 4 running backs, you're going to have some cash left over. So we got to spend that cash. And we're going to do that with wide receivers. I'm going to give you guys some expensive receivers, but all of these guys are by far of interest, core play interest to me this week. So let's start off at the very top with Davante Adams. This guy does have an asterisk. We'll talk about it. But he's $9K on FanDuel. I believe he's the most expensive receiver on FanDuel and also the most expensive receiver on DraftKings. I'm not positive about that, but he's $8K on DraftKings. Davante Adams is back, ladies and gentlemen, at full strength, playing on the road in Tampa Bay. A great game, a great matchup. Brady versus Rodgers. I want to watch it. I love this game. And in general, I like Davante Adams as my favorite play from that game. But 55.5 over-under. Green Bay is -1, so basically, again, another pick'em game, depending on where you look. 27.3 implied team total, really good implied team total for this Green Bay Packers team. I mentioned he should be at full strength, so he has not played, obviously, over the last couple of weeks, but he made comments throughout that time that he would not play until he's 100%. There was a chance he was going to play in week 5, but he said, I'm not 100%. I will only play when I'm not 100%, so you have to believe him, right? He should be full strength here, so it's not something we should worry about, in my opinion. Now, The matchup here is kind of the key. This dude, by all means, is matchup proof. I'm not suggesting you cannot play him, regardless of what I'm about to say. But he's $9,000, so I would prefer him in a good matchup if I can. And that's the key here. There is some health concerns with some injury concerns with the best cornerback, in my opinion, the best cornerback, the guy that will match up with Adams, Davis, the cornerback for Tampa Bay. He is currently questionable, and the last I heard is he's probably not going to play. As I record this video really early in the morning on Saturday, I don't have any other update. I checked at like 3 a.m. last night. Carlton Davis still questionable. If Carlton Davis is out, I am for sure playing Davante Adams, and it's more than likely one of my quarterbacks will be Aaron Rodgers. But as of right now, you have to just understand the play in general is based upon Carlton Davis. If Carlton Davis is in and he seems healthy, then I'll probably back off Davante Adams, at least from my number one receiver, and we'll find to go elsewhere. But in general, it's a high over-under, high implied team total. It's going to be a close game. It's going to be a great game for television. 17 targets in week one. Don't forget, this guy gets targets. There's basically no other receiving threat on that team, including 2 red zone targets. So he's targeted in the red zone. He's targeted a bunch, has a ton of volume. He had 28% of the target share through basically 2 games. That number is much higher if you go back just to week 1, so like 1.5 games before he got injured, whatever it was. 28% of the team air yards. Both those numbers are elite. Tampa Bay's defense has struggled this year, even with Carlton Davis, versus certain receivers that are elite. Whether that's Allen Robinson, Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, all these guys have put up 100-yard games, or big games, I should say, in general, versus the Tampa Bay Bucks. Tampa Bay Bucks have a very good defense. I would say they have the best defense in the NFL, but I would say Green Bay has the best offense in the NFL. So it's going to be an interesting game. Again, the key to this being my number one play, my most owned wide receiver, is the health status, the injury status of Carlton Davis. So pay attention to that. Please come off of this play, especially off of cash game plays. If Carlton Davis is playing, I just want to give you guys that warning. But some guy I am 100% going to play, regardless of what happens, is Calvin Ridley. My man, $8,600 on FanDuel, $7,800 on DraftKings. I am so excited about Calvin Ridley. I don't know why. This guy is the man right now. Playing on the road in Minnesota pairs perfectly with our Matt Ryan stack. Should we go there? 54 over under Atlanta. All the same numbers for Matt Ryan. Atlanta is a underdog on the road at +4, 25.3 implied team total. All those numbers are good for Matt Ryan. That means they're good for Calvin Ridley. He is an elite play. I think he's an elite play with Julio Jones. But in general, when Julio is out, Calvin Ridley is an elite play. I'm going to go through some stats here, and they are just ridiculous. The fact that he's not the most expensive player, wide receiver on the slate, is astonishing to me because this dude has had double-digit targets in 4 out of 5 games. He has had 100-yard receiving games in 4 out of 5 games. The only game was a very difficult cornerback matchup that a lot of people suggested would be tough, and it was. So if you exclude that one really bad matchup, really tough matchup, this dude has double-digit targets in every game, 100-plus receiving yards in every single game. He leads NFL wide receivers with 8 red zone targets on the year. He's getting targeted in the red zone, unlike his counterpart, Julio Jones. He's top 10 in the league with a 25% target share. He's top 10 in the league in terms of his team's air yards at 36%. He's second in the NFL with yards per route run at 2.57. Again, another elite number. Top 10 right now in terms of the wide receiver cornerback matchup suggestion from Pro Football Focus at +33%. So a great matchup versus Minnesota in their cornerbacks. Minnesota's coverage, same with Matt Ryan, graded 20th overall in the NFL. This dude is just a monster, and he's a monster in a great spot. If Julio Jones is out, I think you can again expect double-digit targets. You can again expect a 100-yard receiving game. And man, with all those red zone targets, he should find a way into the red zone. Into the end zone, I should say here. I love Calvin Ridley, definitely as my second receiver here on the slate. Sticking with some expensive receivers here because we can't afford it. If you're sticking with my game plan, it works out. Adam Thielen, $7,400 on FanDuel, $73 on DraftKings. Playing at home versus Atlanta, so we're going the other way. This is kind of the comeback play to the Matt Ryan, Calvin Ridley stack. We're going to come back with Adam Thielen here. Again, playing at home versus Atlanta, 54 over under. All those same numbers apply. The only difference is Minnesota, Adam Thielen, -4 favorites with a 29.3 implied team total. That is the highest implied team total on the entire slate. They're missing running back Cook, obviously. So, in my opinion, yes, Madison, the running back's going to come in. I just don't think Madison's going to get 30 carries in this game. I don't think he's going to get the same volume that Dalvin Cook did. And I think they might have to, possibly. If you just don't discount how good of a running back Cook actually is, it's a great offensive line. It's a great system to play in. But in general, they might have to up their passing game a little bit. They might have to rely a little bit more on Kirk Cousins. And that's what we're counting on here. We're going to try to differentiate. It's a good game to attack. We're going to try to go a different way in terms of getting exposure. Adam Thielen's that guy, hoping for We're hoping for an up in the pass game usage here. But I would submit to you guys, it doesn't matter. The dude has had 23 targets in his last 2 games. So even in games where they have not thrown the ball a lot, because if you consider passing attempts, they've had 43 passing attempts over the last 2 games, and he's had 23 targets. He's had over 50% of the target share. So if they're going to throw the ball 20 times, which is definitely not going to happen, but that's the low floor, he's going to get 10 targets. If they throw the ball 30 times or more, I don't know. This guy's going to have a lot of targets. That's basically how it's going to equal out. But I like him for that reason. He's kind of safe even if they do rely more on the run, which they will, but if they don't have to pass the ball a lot, you still have a lot of opportunity with Adam Thielen here. He's in the second best wide receiver cornerback matchup on the slate at plus 49%. He's the highest graded NFL wide receiver. Pro Football Focus loves this guy, suggesting he is the best wide receiver right now in the NFL, even considering what we just talked about with Calvin Ridley. Adam Thielen is one spot above him. He leads the NFL with a 33% team target share. I talked about even in bad games, that still equals out to good numbers for him. Price is a little bit cheaper than the 2 other guys I mentioned in addition to that. He leads the NFL with a 46% team air yards. So basically tops the NFL in all the stats that matter. 3rd in the NFL in yards per route run at 2.38. I'm just rattling stats off here. Basically, this dude has been elite, and he's been elite all season long. Finally, Atlanta's secondary. Atlanta's defense, we know how bad they've been all year. They've been graded out 23rd, bottom 10 in the league, according to Pro Football Focus. So Adam Thielen is setting up for a monster game here. I really like him. I'm going to pay up at wide receiver for sure, and he's going to be one of those guys. We do need somebody to pair with Matt Stafford. The easy choice, obviously, is Kenny Golladay. Getting a lot of ownership this week in a great spot. Price on FanDuel is better. It's $7,200 than DraftKings. He's only $6,200 on DraftKings. That price is just too low. That's going to result in him getting a lot of ownership on DraftKings. I don't know how it happened or why it happened, but he is just priced. Like, you think about Devontae Adams, immediately comes back from injury, hasn't played in a few weeks, and he's the most expensive wide receiver on the slate. Kenny Golladay has been back for 2 weeks, and they just priced him way down, and I think he scored touchdowns in both games he's been back. It just doesn't make sense, but in general, play this guy with Matt Stafford, playing without it. It's a good price. It's a good value on both sites. But in general, as I mentioned, playing on the road in Jacksonville, 54.5 over under. Detroit is a slight favorite on the road with a 28.8 implied team total. All good numbers for Matt Stafford. All good numbers for Kenny Golladay. All good numbers from that offense for Detroit in a good stack there. He's had 15 targets in his last 2 games. Really, really good numbers there, including 2 red zone targets. And keep in mind, he has not been playing full games. I think he went from like 70% of the snaps to 80 or 90. So the numbers are going up, which is good, and we should see more usage, especially in this spot, in my opinion. He has by far the best wide receiver cornerback matchup on the slate at plus 52%. I never see it above 50%. So talking about an elite spot, this guy is in it for sure. He's top 10 on the slate. I know he's only played a couple of games, but top 10 on the slate with a 25% target share. You want to see a guy that's getting most of the targets for his team, and this is that guy right here. He's 12th on the slate with 31% team air yards. And then Jacksonville's defense, their coverage is currently graded 22nd overall in the NFL. So bottom 10, Jacksonville is allowing a 341 passing yards per game and a 72% completion rate. So they're graded real bad. From an eye test, from a grading perspective, Jacksonville can't cover anyone. In addition to that, the numbers suggest they're giving up a lot of yards in the air, and they're allowing anybody and everyone to catch the ball against them. So Kenny Golladay, Matt Stafford, that whole passing attack set up very well here, but Kenny Golladay is just priced way too low in my opinion. So So always the toughest position to decide how and where to go. Last week we paid up and it worked out for the first time. We're getting away from that. We're coming back down to earth here. Coming back to the strategy we typically employ, which is mid-tier to low-tier priced tight ends with opportunities. So with that said, opportunities, Eric Ebron is my number one guy here at $5,200 on FanDuel, $4,100 on DraftKings. Price is great on DraftKings. Go there, in my opinion. Playing at home versus Cleveland, 51 over/under. Pittsburgh is a minus 3.4 favorite. That is definitely a wrong number. They're minus 3.5 favorites with a 27.0 implied team total. It's a solid price. It's a solid salary on him. I think it does offer value. You could be talking about a potential shootout game. His targets, the most important thing here is opportunity with tight ends. And his targets have increased each and every game that Deontay Johnson has missed. He's scheduled to miss. He's going to be out this game. So I think you're going to see a little bit of a target increase for Eric Ebron. Additionally, everyone's going to play Claypool again. Dude was a monster, right? 4 touchdowns. I am a Steelers fan, but in general, don't go there if he's going to be 40% owned, 30% owned. Go to Eric Ebron, find a different way. And I think in general, the way you attack Cleveland is down the middle. It's not with outside receivers. It's with inside receivers. It's with Juju Smith-Schuster, which I'll talk about a little bit later. It's with Eric Ebron. In general, that's how you attack that Cleveland team. So we're going to take advantage of that knowledge here with Eric Ebron. In addition to that, you don't have to be afraid of. You can rely on Eric Ebron being on the field. He played 77% of the snaps in Week 5. A good number there. But more importantly, the number you want to focus on for tight ends is this routes run number. It's provided by RotoWire. I think that's the only site that provides it, but that's definitely a site you want to check out for tight ends. That he's a 94% routes run. That's an elite number, meaning he basically when he's on the field and it's a passing play, 94% of the time he runs a route. So he's not a blocking tight end, where Vance McDonald does block a lot for them, even on passing plays. Eric Ebron is a guy they utilize as part of their passing game. So you like that. You like that opportunity. That's what you want for tight ends. I mentioned Cleveland does struggle down the middle. They struggle versus tight ends. They've given up the 6th most amount of points to fantasy points to tight ends on the season. In addition to that, they've allowed four different tight ends to score touchdowns on the year. That's 5th in the NFL in terms of touchdowns given up to the tight end position. I expect lower ownership here. Again, a lot of people will go with Claypool, in my opinion, from this game. So Eric Ebron, I don't know, 5-6% ownership, lower ownership in general. It was hard to find a second guy to really give you guys, but another guy I am slightly interested in, I guess, is Evan Ingram. He did okay last week. I started him. I think I gave him out as a play. He scored a rushing touchdown. I think it was just a mishap that ended up being a rushing touchdown, but was kind of a pass, whatever it was. Evan Ingram is back on the slate here, back on my recommendations. Again, just trying to find that mid-tier to low-priced tight ends. I do prefer Eric Ebron over him, but if you're going another way, I like $5,600 on FanDuel for Ingram, $49 on DraftKings. Good lower price guys here. He's playing at home versus Washington with a 43 over/under. Very ugly number there. New York Giants are somehow favorites, I guess because Washington's so bad, at -2.5 with a 22.8 applied team total. So none of those numbers are very attractive, but you can still selectively pick guys if the price is right, and I think that's what's the case here with Evan Ingram. Decently low price salary, can possibly find value. Basically, you're talking about a guy that has elite talent. He's a very athletic tight end. We've seen him in the past do some major damage versus teams. Hasn't really done it this year, but that's what we want, I guess, out of a tight end, especially at a lower price like this. So that's what we're targeting. He does have double-digit target upside. He had 10 targets so far in one game this year. Had it multiple times in the past and in other games. So he does have that upside. Let's hope we get there this week. He's playing 81% of the snaps too, so compared to Eric Ebron, he plays more snaps on the season. He's seeing an 18 to 20% team target share. Wish it was 25%. I don't know who else. I guess Slayton they throw to, but still a solid number. If we can get a 20% target share and we can get Daniel Jones to throw the ball 30 or 40 times, it can equal decent opportunity here for Evan Ingram. 91% routes run, so I talked about 94% being a lead for Eric Ebron. Similar deal here, 91% of the routes run for Evan Ingram. So when he's on the field and it's a pass play, this dude runs routes. They don't let him block. He's their athletic catching tight end, so he does go out for passes. Again, a number we want to focus in on. And then in terms of the defense, Washington has allowed the 5th most fantasy points to tight ends. We're just basically trying to find those defenses that give up points to tight ends. Washington's certainly one of those teams. Last but not least here, Washington has allowed 5 5 touchdowns to the tight end position. That is 4th most in the NFL. So it's a decent spot. It's a good opportunity. We'll see how it plays out. But Eric Ebron, Evan Ingram are definitely those mid to low price tight ends that I like for the week. So that really takes care of the core plays for this particular slate. Always want to give you guys some other highlights. Always a bunch of other ways you can go. Obviously, I didn't just give you a lineup. So there's a ton of other players that we can play this week. I want to mention some others. Deshaun Watson, Aaron Rodgers, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Kirk Cousins. Those are other quarterbacks. That's a lot of quarterbacks, right? But those are the other guys I'm interested in. If you ask me at this moment who I like the most, I'm interested in somehow Kirk Cousins. I'm interested in Aaron Rodgers. I was really interested in Ryan Fitzpatrick, but hear me out. I checked in on that game. They are huge favorites. They're -8 or 9 favorites. For Miami, that's crazy. In addition to that, they're playing the Jets. The Jets are horrendous versus the pass. They can't cover anyone. They give up a ridiculous completion percentage. All good things for Ryan Fitzpatrick's receivers, including Devontae Parker. But there's also a ton of wind and a ton of rain projected for that game. So I am coming off Ryan Fitzpatrick for that reason. I'm more interested in Myles Gaskin, who I do have listed here. But that's just some thoughts here. If the game clears up, if it's going to be a bright and sunny day, whatever, in Florida, I will be more interested in him. But just want to give you guys kind of the notes there. Derrick Henry, I talked about him, and Alexander Mattison. Derrick Henry, if you're going to play cash games, if you can afford him, obviously a great play at home. Just expect you're going to be amongst ton of ownership with that guy. Same deal. Alexander Mattison is projected to be the highest owned player on this slate. So if you ask me, so on FanDuel, he's like $7,500. Would you pay $7,500 any other week for Alexander Mattison? I don't think I would. I'm not saying the upside isn't there. I'm not saying he's not going to get it done, but that's really expensive for a guy that's a backup. So his price would be lower if FanDuel didn't screw up with their stats and whatever and not release lineups, not release their slate until like Wednesday or whatever. His price would have been lower, but they had time to adjust and they did. Alexander Mattison is priced just way too high in my opinion. I'll get exposure to him, but I'm not gonna eat 40% chalk on him. I'm just not gonna do it. I'm gonna try to go elsewhere. I talked about Thielen. Let's move on here. Ronald Jones, though, if Fournette's going to be out again, I do like him against Green Bay. Green Bay, last couple of years, has been really, really bad versus the run. So Ronald Jones in a good spot. They do run the ball a lot. Talked about Myles Gaskin, probably my preferred player from that Miami team at this moment. I do like A.J. Brown for Tennessee. I don't like a stack. I don't like Tannehill. I don't like them at home. I like more that Derrick Henry run narrative. But A.J. Brown, definitely a good spot. Definitely too cheap on his price tag, by the way. I do like A.J. Brown. Justin Jefferson, I talked about Thielen. Justin Jefferson also in a good spot. This is why I do like Kirk Cousins. I think you can go Thielen, Jefferson for sure this week. Marquise Brown, I just keep playing him. Price too low, is an elite receiver, has elite stats in my opinion. And he went off last week. At least he scored a touchdown, had like 75 yards on a touchdown. Jamison Crowder still getting ridiculous target usage, ridiculous percentage of the team's targets. Gotta like him each and every week. Juju Smith-Schuster, he's the guy that's going to get on the inside. He's going to play inside receiver at times versus Cleveland. That's the way you attack Cleveland. So if you're interested in a receiver, don't go Claypool. Well, go Claypool, okay? I'm not going to tell you not to go Claypool because he's going to score 4 touchdowns. But Juju Smith-Schuster is the preferred guy in my opinion, especially with lower ownership. Jonnu Smith for Tennessee, the tight end, would be another tight end I'm interested in. And TJ Hawkinson, a tight end for Detroit, fits well with that stack. Woo, so we did cover a ton there. Hopefully, again, this is always helpful for you guys. I want to give you guys some information. I don't just want to give you guys the names and the picks, but rather help you guys make the decision as to why, how, and why you should play certain players. Leave me some comments down below. I love when you guys, leave some information. This is a weird slate, in my opinion, but it's one that seems to be really shaping up to be a fun one. I always mention down below, if you're interested in making multiple lineups, if you're interested in figuring out where I get some of my value plays, how I kind of figure out players, how I do all the different stuff I do, talk about Vegas lines, all that stuff. It's Daily Fantasy Nerd, DFN. It's the optimizer. It's linked down below. Go ahead, check it out. I believe you get a free month. In addition to that, it is an affiliate link, so it does help out my channel. I'd really appreciate if you guys check that out. It's going to help you become a better DFS player, and that's plain and simple. Both NFL, MLB, I know that's over. Any type of DFS you play, trust me, Daily Fantasy Nerd is going to help you become a better DFS player, so check that out. But besides that, thank you guys, as always, so much for tuning in. Thank you guys for finding your way to the channel, clicking on this video. Give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Share this video, share these videos with your mom, grandma, whoever. I'd appreciate it if you guys would share it around. I wish you guys the best of luck, and I will catch you in the next video.